Hello again. In this video, we're going to go over working with more colored information data. In the previous one, we used vibrance. I have this layer turned on, so I'm going to hide it right now. What I want to do now, we're going to create another layer adjustment. And this time, I'm going to select the hue and saturation. With this tool, it gives us even more control. So I'm just going to expand this so we can see all the tools and controls that are available. Always start off with using the different presets. So this is default. We have cyanotype. You can see what's happening here. What I want to do as you're going through these different modes, uh, each one does something different, but I want to go back to cyanotype, and I want to point out that we have these two different spectrums up on at the very bottom. The top one relates to the color that you would normally associate, meaning the color information within that, like say, what is red, what is yellow, what is green. By default, you can see that both of these are 1 and 1. Cyan is cyan, blue is blue, magenta, magenta, red is red, etc., etc. But when we switch this to cyanotype, you can see that now all the colors are now based off of this color, this cyan color. So this kind of gives you kind of like a spot color where the entire color within your image has been changed. So you could always change the hue of that one so that you can see what's going on within this image. But here, let's go back to the different presets. Here's old style. It makes it a little bit faded because you're lowering down the saturation. Red boost, sepia, kind of like those old-timey photos. A strong saturation. It's getting all the color information and it's increasing the saturation. It's not changing it to red. Yellow boost. Let's go back to default. So this is the default. Right now it's set to master. Under master, you are able to change the individual colors, but let's leave it to master for right now. And as we move the hue, I'm going to drag this towards the right, and you can see what's happening. If you look at the very bottom, the spectrums, I'm going to move it all the way over here to the side. And what you'll notice now is that whatever was red uh, is now been associated with this like a bluish, this greenish blue. And I'm going to zoom in. If you recall, one of the different chalk drawings, this one was the keep calm and carry on. Let's hide it. That was red, but you can see how all the colors, everything within this image have been shifted. Now, maybe that's not what you want. You don't want to shift all the colors. Maybe you just want to shift certain colors. So let's go back to default. And instead of shifting all the colors, let's focus on the reds. I'm going to go for masters. I'm going to tell it to red. Notice that we have this kind of limiter where it's only going to limit this much of that color. As I move the hue, you can see that only the areas of color that red would uh, affect are being changed. Now you can see that this is changing all instances of red within your image. I'm going to go right here and say, for example, what if I extend this out? I'm looking over here where there's a couple of areas that it's missing. So I'm going to drag this out, and you can see it's slowly incorporating a little bit more. And if I drag this one, this is where the most of the change is occurring. And you can see how it's adding more of that information. From this point to this point, it's slowly dying off. The same as this one. This is where it's most influenced, and this is where it stops. So I could even drag this one out as well, so that I get a more of a gradient. But this is only changing red. I could go to the magentas as well and shift this one, and you can see how now I'm able to get the rest of that color that wasn't being associated. So a couple of things that I want to keep in mind is that we still have the layer mask, and it's all white, meaning that it's affecting the entire image. So as we change this, I'm only looking at a part of it. Let's hide this, click on this eye. You can see before, after, before, after. It's changing all instances of red and magenta with my image. I could go back to default to undo that. And in addition, like say for example, let's look at the greens. In this instance, say I want to change the color of the grass. You would think it'd be green, but I've noticed that it only has subtle effect. Right here is like, say I want to make this a little bit lighter color, a little more yellow. And what if I want to increase the saturation? Or what if I decrease the saturation, makes it a little bit darker? Now when I go to yellows, you can see how this is really changing the green. Do I want to make it kind of like astroturf or artificial turf? Do I want to increase it or decrease the saturation? So let's see what it looks like before, after, before, after. But remember, this is changing everything. This is the after. So as we're doing this, and you can see how it's affecting the entire areas, there are ways that you are able to specify only certain parts of your image. And that is when we start to adjust the selection, the layer mask. And that's something that we'll cover in a video a little bit later. But these changes are applying to the entire image. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change some of the colors right here. Say for example, let's go to red, and maybe I want these to be a little bit more vibrant. You can see all the red because I want this one to be have a little bit more vibrance. I could always change the lightness to this one as well. So I'm making those reds darker so that they're still vibrant, but they're toning them down to making the reds a little bit more rich. So let's click the hide it. This is before, here's after, before, after. So in the next video, we're going to go over yet another method of being able to change your color information. So we'll see you there.